let's take a hot second to fix an issue that we have with our slugs, and that is if you have something of the same name, the slug will get overwritten. So let's say we have brew bar here, and the slug is brew slash bar. If I were to add another one called brew bar, because there's two brew bars, I'm gonna call it brew bar 2. Upload a photo real quick. Brew bar, let's see. There's one in Australia. Good. And we upload it. We successfully created it, but good beers was the description of the first one. Now, how do we get to the second one? Well, we've created this unreachable URL where we have brew bar and brew bar. Both of them go to the first brew bar, not the second brew bar. So, and that's just because if we open up our schema store.js and our models directory, you'll see that our pre-save function here is pretty simple in that it just says this.slug equals slug this.name. So we're not checking for any like duplicate slugs or anything like that. And that's exactly what we want to do right now. So we will change this function to an async function, because what we're going to do is we're going to, before we save the actual store, we're going to check if there are any other stores with that same slug. So we'll go down here, make it async, go down below where we say this.slug equals slug. And then we need to find other stores that have a slug of West, West 1, West 2, etc. Because the whole idea here is if we have a store called West, and then we have a second store called West, it should be West 1. And then if we have already two stores that are West and West 1, it should be West 2, etc., etc. So what we need to do here is make a regex that is going to search for stores that have a slug of West, West 1, West 2, West 3. So essentially what we need to do is we need to search for stores that have anything with West or anything that has West dash and then some sort of number. So it's going to be a little bit of a complex regex that we have here. Feel free to go ahead and grab this from the steps solutions if you don't feel like typing this by hand, but I really just want to get the point across about how this actually works. So we're first going to make a regex, which is a const slug reg X. And if you've never written a regex before, it's sort of like a way to pattern match in JavaScript. And we'll say new regexp, regular expression. And the regular expression is going to be in backticks. And let's do the second part first. We'll just say it's I, which is case insensitive. So if we have uppercase or lowercase, I don't want to have slugs overwriting each other in that sense. So our regular expression is going to have a hat and parentheses. And then we'll put this .slug inside of it. So far what this means is that we are searching for URLs that start with this .slug. Okay, so far so good. Then we want to have a second group here where we say it ends with, that's what the $sign is. It ends with one of two things. We put another capture in there, a dash and 0 through 9. And then that can be as many, could be 1, could be West 100. So we have a star and a $sign, which means that ends with that. And then in between those two, we're going to put a question mark, which means that part is optional. So what that means is that we're looking for something with a slug, and then it might end in -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Next, we need to actually pass that regex into a query. So we'll say const stores with slug equals await. Now we essentially want to say store.find, but we don't have store yet because we actually haven't even made it yet. So how do you access the model inside of a model's function? And this was a little bit confusing to me at first, but I eventually got it with this constructor find, and this constructor will be equal to store by the time it actually runs. And we're going to find stores where the slug is equal to the slug reg x. So when you have to do sort of a fuzzy match, you can always use a regex instead of an actual absolute value. Then right here, we're going to say if stores with slug.length. So if there are any matches that have come back, we're simply going to overwrite this .slug by saying this .slug equals backticks. We're going to say this .slug dash And we're going to say dash one, dash two, dash three, dash four. We need to make that part dynamic. So we'll say stores with slug dot length plus one. So what will happen is if we search for Wes, it's going to come back with, yes, somebody already used that, and there's going to be one. So we're going to say, okay, well, that slug is already taken. This is going to be Wes 1. So it's going to be Wes 1, and then there'll be Wes 2, Wes 3, et cetera, et cetera. So give that a save. Then we call next, which will continue on the saving of our actual data to the database. So we'll give us a refresh. We'll try to make a new brew bar now. So click on add brew bar, and we'll say brew bar 3. We'll choose a file here and upload brew bar. Let's get another one. Man, Australia has a lot of brew bars. Give it a save. And you can see now that brew bar is showing up because there was 2 already. Brew bar 3 is now, and if I were to add a 4th, it would be brew bar 4, et cetera, et cetera. You get the point, right? So sometimes you need to make a little bit more advanced functions, and that is done in your store schema pre-hooks. And because we're using async await, we don't need to use any callbacks. We just make that function async as well.